Hi, welcome to Android. In the previous session, we discussed about the fundamental concepts of intent. We understood how intent works and what are implicit and explicit intents. In this session, we will develop some code sample for intent and see it in action. For this, we'll create a new activity called intent activity with two buttons to show two different types of intents being fired. Now here is we have one activity I have just created called intent activity with two buttons, browser intent and dialer intent. So when I click browser intent button, a browser get launched through an intent and here again through an intent. So let us start with a simple class. We'll select this, give the same package name, and we have a class ready. Now what we'll do is that since there are two buttons, let us declare two variables, name as browser underscore bt and dialer underscore bt. Since button is not imported, so let us import that, and then we'll use our most important method on create. And what is the first thing we generally do? Good, set content view, and we know the which layout we are going to use, intent activity, the one we have this one, this is the activity, right? Now let us get the reference to those two objects, browser button object. So put the button for browser button and then same thing for dialer. From where I am getting this ID, from where I am getting this ID, intent browser BT, intent dialer BT, it is from here, right? Check the ID, intent browser BT and intent dialer BT. So these are the ID of those objects, so that's why we are getting this. Now once you have these two, next thing is that add a listener to these buttons. So what standard thing is browser underscore bt dot set on click listener. This is a standard method we have seen earlier, and I am passing this. But how does this works? It expects a listener object implementing an interface called onClick listener, but this class does not implement a interface onClick listener. So what we will do is that we will change it here. We have to import the interface. Just be careful, import the one which is in the view. And then you write a code here which will get triggered depending on which button get. So instead of, since we have both the buttons, so let us put it for both the listener. So whenever either of these two buttons, browser or dialer, is clicked, basically it will trigger the listener object called this, because this listener object from this class implements onClick listener, and it indirectly, because the listener object will go to onClick method here. So what do you do here? First you find out which button he clicked. And how you find out? Very simple. You find out the ID of the object which get clicked. And he will say, okay, and then very simple, just check if view ID equals to r.id.intent browser bt, then do something. Else if you have clicked dialer button, then do something. So what we are going to do here is that we are going to create a new intent and fire it. My browser intent, correct? Let me import this. New intent dot action view. And then you have to pass the data here, and this will be some URL. Once the intent object is ready, now to fire this intent. How you fire? There are various ways. You can say start activity, you can say start service. So depending on what is your intent and what you want to do, you can start it. My browser intent. Okay. Now another thing, similarly what we will do is that we will fire another intent, and the interesting part about these two intents are that both of them are implicit intent. What it means is that I am not telling which activity will handle this event, this message object which I am sending, who will handle it. I am just telling here is the data and here is the action. Some activity need to handle it, but which activity I am not telling it. Here it won't be view, it will be dial, and there are a standard set of implicit intent which is there. You can create your own intent and it is perfectly fine. The only thing you have to be careful though is that the data you are passing inside URI.parse is not anything randomly. It has to be a standard format. So if I remove everything TL and just put anything my telephone semicolon something, it won't work. So just be careful that there is a standard format which you should use. Okay. Now we are pretty much ready with our code. If you see this in this code, if you see, we have created a class here, and these two are implicit intent. So first implicit intent is this and second implicit intent is this. So basically in this implicit intent we said that here is action view and here is a data www.cloney.com and some activities should take care of it. But which activity? So Android comes up with a built-in activity called browser, and who is listening for action view action for a particular intent action called intent.actionView. So the moment I launch this, that particular browser activity gets triggered by Android. Now again, when I am saying that send the intent with an action called action dial, there is already an activity in your phone which is called a dialer activity. Now that get triggered because that dialer activity is registered to listen action dial, and that's pretty much it does it. So let me just close this and see how it goes. The layout class, put it in main activity, put it in Android manifest. The next thing is that put it in the main activity class to launch this. Now where is this guy? 16 intent. Now am I doing anything? No, there is nothing happening right now. So what we will do is that we will put that intent and launch this activity from here. So for that I'm just copying it and putting it here. Okay, so we'll call it instead of that declaring that intent object again and again, what you could do is that intent my intent and then you can just use that variable again and again instead of creating so many objects unnecessarily. It just saves the memory of the JVM. Now here I will mention intent activity. Once intent activity is connected to the menu's intent, we are pretty much ready to go. Okay. So let us try to run this application. So our emulator is starting, so let us give it a few minutes and it should be ready. Now our emulator is ready, so let us see that how it goes, and it is a good idea to see. So now our application Traveler Assistant has been launched. We'll go to the menu and we know that it is under more intent. So when I click intent, that intent activity is basically launched. Now once it is launched, if I click the browser intent, it will launch a browser activity which will bring the website whatever you have sent as a data, and in this case it is launching a website called cloney.com. Okay, now let us go back and see the dialer intent. If I click the dialer intent, it launches the activity called dialer and it shows you the number which you have passed through your source code, and if I click now dial, it will start dialing it. Although in emulator you cannot dial it, but at least it simulates that you're dialing or something. Okay, and that kinds of wraps up the complete sample for how to fire a intent, implicit intent from an activity. For explicit intent, in this place you will give the name of this, it takes context, and here you will give the name of the class where you have to go. See this one, this is explicit intent, right? This is an explicit intent because I am saying that please create this intent object and destination of this intent object is this class. start activity, but in this one it is implicit intent. I am saying that some action has to be taken on this data, but I don't know which activity will handle this. So these two are implicit intent. And that's pretty much wraps up our intent exercise.